Welcome to Higher Caliber, where each week we dive into the backstory and history of the people and companies that keep America running.
We obviously promote people's businesses when they're on here, but I don't know. And the whole name thing was definitely a play on words because we're gun people, but we wanted it. Whenever you see somebody go, oh, that's a high caliber individual, like
right.
That was kind of the whole. So
yeah, that's the interesting thing too. Is I kind of figured it would be a gun, like firearm centric.
Most people do.
Yeah, but I mean, I like it. I like the idea. It's just, and also too. I mean, I never listen to any. I'm sure there are gun related podcasts out there. I don't listen to any of them, but I feel like it's a more of a niche.
Right.
Or niche, as they say.
I don't speak French. No, but I don't know. I've listened to a bunch of gun podcasts, and originally it was going to be a Fire Ridge podcast. And it was just one of those things where I'm like, I don't think like the average person really cares. Like you said, like it's too niche, and I didn't want to just. And I would get a little imposter syndrome because I hear like these really top tier instructors doing podcasts, and I'm like, I don't know half the stuff they do, and I would rather listen to their podcast and make my own.
Right. Yeah, that probably will be a recurring theme today, imposter syndrome. But I think just because you're you and they're them, you probably still have something to offer that maybe they don't, or something you can do different.
Right.
But it's like being other than the fact that they probably like, especially the high profile instructors. I'm not going to name drop, but they probably already have a following, so they kind of have a built-in audience.
Right.
Whereas you may have to build it more organically.
Yeah, because like you said, I already knew them and then said, oh, they have a podcast. I didn't just start cruising podcasts and find them.
It's like you said earlier about the super followers.
Yeah.
Some people are just going to buy into whatever you do just because of who you are.
Right.
Not that that's a bad thing, but...
No, but I'm one of them. I guess you can call them super fans, but
yeah, right.
I think they're super followers now.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your new business.
So
let's talk about what do you do professionally.
So I am a full-time fireman. I've been full-time for like 3.5 years, but I've been a fireman for 5 years. I got into that later in life, as many people do.
Can you tell people, before we get into it, can you tell people the story of how you started? Because it's my favorite story.
Oh, well.
Or at least how you...
of how I essentially went down the road of being a fireman.
Down the rabbit hole.
So I got out of the Army, as many people may or may not know. You and I know each other from the Army. We just happened to be in the same basic training, and we lived an hour away from each other and became friends. But got out of the Army in 2013, and like many people thought I was like, oh, I'm just going to go to school and figure it out, or get a job. My family had a restaurant that I basically knew I had a job no matter what.
Right.
So to me, I was just like, oh, I'm just happy to be getting out of the military, and I'll figure it out from there. And it turned into like, not really doing odd jobs, but kind of just like continuing the path of trying to find my way, like trying to figure out. I had no idea what I wanted to do in life.
Right.
And I get jealous of people. Like my girlfriend knew what she wanted to do. I don't know how old she was, but like for sure when she was in high school, like 9th, 10th grade, she knew what she wanted to do and she knew how to get there. Mm-hmm. And for me, even at like 18 years old, I was like, shit, dude. Like, yeah. But so I kind of went through some like weird phases. I ended up doing construction. I was in the laborers union in Cleveland. Did that for, I don't know. It was like probably somewhere around 2 years, but I was in building trades. There's two different laborers unions in Cleveland. One is like a building trade. One is highway. So typically the highway trades don't work through the winter because they're I mean, there is work in the winter, but generally speaking, if you work highway, you're going to be laid off for 3 months of the year, and it's just kind of expected. Building trades, you do have seasonal layoffs, but especially the company I was at the time, they were a pretty heavy hitter, and they would keep people working 12 months out of the year. Like, you would have little layoffs here and there, but around, it would have been probably 2016, because it was around the time of the Republican National Convention was in Cleveland.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Tons of stuff, tons of work going on, and it was like, everybody was working. People working overtime. It was just like there was no shortage of work. And then as soon as that was over, everything dried up, and that was like July. So I got laid off, which
right in the middle of construction season.
Yeah, right in the middle. And
weird.
like I said, that it does happen. It's not completely unheard of, but oftentimes it'll be like, you might be laid off for a week or 2 weeks, and then they find somewhere for you to go.
Yeah.
Like I said, the company I was at was kind of notorious for keeping people working. Also, like a quick aside there, the type of work that we did a lot of like asbestos abatement work, which is not glamorous to say the least.
Yeah.
And my company, we did a lot of different stuff, but that was what we were known for, like bread and butter. So that was one of the reasons why they stayed so busy, right? But I hated it. It was miserable. So I get laid off, and at first I'm like, okay, I get a couple of weeks off in July, August, like no big deal. You get unemployment, which is not as much money as you normally make.
It's not nothing.
Right. But then 3 weeks, 4 weeks go by, and I'm like, okay, this is getting a little like, it's turning into like, okay, this might not be sustainable if I can't go find some work.
Right.
So ultimately, I don't remember the exact order of events, but I was like in this layoff, and I talked to you. I think we just talked on the phone, and I was like telling you the story, and I'd always been interested in fire and EMS. Like a lot of people, all I ever heard was how hard it was to get a job. And like, you got to know somebody, and you hear the stories about 500 people are taking a test for one position. Yeah. So, I didn't really think it was a viable option. Also, at this point, I have military experience, which generally gets you extra credit points. Right. So that's a little bit of a game changer too. But basically, you were just like, I'll be honest with you, man, I think you should just give it a try because I think you'll like it.
Yeah.
And I just kind of made the decision. I was like, you know what? If they call me back to work at my construction job, I'll go back to work. If they don't, I'm not going to call and ask, and I'm going to get in EMT school. It was the first school that I went to. So I didn't get called back, and also unemployment is not indefinite. I was to the point where, like, if I didn't go back to work went somewhere around the first of the year, I was going to lose my unemployment benefit, and then I was going to.
It's like generally 6 months, right?
Yeah, I can't remember
Before
exactly.
You get an extension, it's around 6 months.
Yeah,
like that.
And it's a little bit different for construction as well. I don't know. There may be extensions, but I think it's a little bit different just because of the type of work. I'm not really sure.
Right.
But I didn't get called back to work, and I got an EMT school, and I did EMT school, did fire school. Then I got a part-time job working in Madison, and then went to medic school, and just kind of like, it was like I just woke up one day and you look back and it's, it took probably a year and a half or close to 2 years to get everything done. And then I look back at it, and it was over, like I'm sure you remember what it was like when you finished medic school. Cause I think you had your fire card and your EMT.
Yeah, I did EMT, fire school, then medic school.
So, you look back at that and it's like, when you start, it seems almost like, not like, it seems like a big undertaking, and it is.
Yeah, when you're looking at 2 years of before you can be where you actually want to be.
And also, what does everybody say about medic school? What's all you hear about medic school?
It sucks.
How hard it is,
Yeah.
and that it sucks, and that you have no free time. And
Right.
looking back at it, I think that's an accurate, I think that's an accurate statement.
Yeah.
But like I said, then you graduate and you're done, and you're like, wow, that's the whole last 18 months or 2 years flew by. And then I was fortunate enough that I got hired relatively quickly. I had already been testing, which anyone who doesn't know, you typically police and fire jobs or civil service jobs that you have to test for.
Yeah.
You get ranked, and then you get interviewed based off your rank on the list. I did well on a handful of tests. I had some tests I did not do so well on. And I had other places where I didn't make it past the first round of interviews. Presumably for, personal history, background related questions. But, and then I got hired, and that's it, man. Here I am kind of 5 years later, just doing it.
Didn't you say they asked you in an interview, like, what got you into this? You're like, my friend just said, hey, you should do it.
Yeah. Literally, it's the God's honest truth, though.
Yeah.
I had interest in it.
Right.
Because that's a big thing. A lot of people that are in the fire service tell other younger people that it's the best job in the world, and for a lot of people it is. But if you have no interest in it whatsoever, then that might not be the case for you. So I did have interest in it, but that was really the push. It really took a big push to get me to go down that road.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of people that we talk to that are ex-Army or whatever are just like, yeah, I thought about doing that. I think it's just the mindset, kind of like you're always at that crossroad. Not always, but the type of people that we encounter are like, should I join the Army? Should I be a fireman, a cop? And then it just kind of like, it's kind of there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I wonder why that is. On some level, they are good jobs, and there is, I wouldn't say it's a low barrier for entry.
Right.
I wouldn't say, it is kind of relatively strict when you think about, you have to have a clean history, which is a big deal for some people. And then you have to do all the schooling and take tests and stuff like that. But I think it seems like an attainable,
especially when you get out, you're like, well, I can take directions and show up to work on time and shave. So there's the three big ones right there.
I think if you're specifically talking about people getting out of the military, I think that it is an easier transition, or it's a more it seems like a logical step.
Right.
It would be if something happened and I lost my job or couldn't continue to do my job, if I got hurt, it's like, well, what would be another logical thing that I could do? I could work in the hospital, right? And it's not necessarily the job that I want, but it would be an easy transition.
Right.
So maybe there's some of that, and you're incentivized by extra credit points too. So you're going to have a leg up on people who presumably were not in the military.
Yeah.
Where I work, I think we have maybe 59 members, and it's at least a third of us are prior service.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a huge advantage.
Well, it's paramilitary in it's supposed to be paramilitary in the rank structure. You get that, but you don't have to show up at 5 a.m. and do PT. You probably should, but I think the most shape I was ever in my life is when someone made me do something I didn't want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, there's the accountability.
Right.
And by accountability, I mean when the option is just not given to you.
Right.
But
I still, this memory lives rent free in my head. But I remember being in basic training on one of our weekend passes, and one of the drill sergeants that wasn't. I mean, you probably were around too, I'm sure, but one of the drill sergeants that wasn't ours was like, We've worked for 5 or 6 weeks to melt this fat off your body, and here you are putting it right back.
I do remember that, and I was stuffing my fucking face.
Yeah, dude.
It's like I call that like the elastic snapback effect, like when you're just like pulling on that rubber band, and then finally like you break loose. And it's funny, I do remember that, because the other thing was it was junk food and caffeine, because we weren't allowed to have caffeine.
Getting straight zooted on monsters, dude.
And that was back when like
there was only green.
Yeah.
Green or blue.
And it was like 160 milligrams of caffeine.
Yeah.
Now it's like
they had the BFCs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we went out, we probably drank. I remember there were kids, like, I say I went crazy, and I did, but there were guys that drank, like, didn't someone drink like 5 monsters?
I forget who it was.
Somebody did something that was like, we were like, dude, you might not survive.
And I think he never had one before. And then we're like, you don't drink 5. Like 2 max, not 5. And like I remember our graduation, when it was kind of like a free pass day, you go to the shop at like pounding monsters, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, and
pissing neon green
dude,
for 3 days.
So bad. And then it's kind of crazy, like, to think we went not 4 whole months because we had breaks, but essentially 4 months with no caffeine and, operating on little sleep and just in a constant state of boredom.
Right.
Because let's be honest, like, that's why I drink caffeine, is so I could do nothing with more energy.
Right.
But yeah, and then you go from that, then you just start drinking caffeine again, and like the first couple times you drink it, you're like, man, I feel great. Yep. And then you just go back to like what you were before.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember graduating and going to the base or whatever, and it was like, so I can just smoke cigarettes and drink Monster in the same uniform.
It's encouraged.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, not only are you allowed, but like we do it every hour. Sometimes twice.
He's going to be a good soldier right there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I remember too. It's like, when did you ever pull up to the troop and there wasn't like 6 dudes outside smoking and joking? Even dudes that didn't smoke. Like, people would just go out there and chief a cigarette just because.
I try to tell people that, like, we used to have these things that they've been named gut trucks long before I was even born, but they would just show up in the middle of nowhere.
Roach Coach.
And just dispense cartons of cigarettes and Monster and tacos. Mm-hmm. That's a habit you can't break. Like, I still dream about a truck showing up with empanadas.
Maybe I have this weird, like, I don't want to say love of, but like, I really enjoy gas station food. Mm-hmm. And I think that might be one of the reasons why, is because it's like nostalgia of the gut truck.
Right.
Because I regularly, like, especially when I'm out working, I'm like, I got to pack lunch. And then I'm like, but those Circle K Tostados are fire.
Yeah.
And they're so cheap, you're basically losing money if you don't.
Well, a couple months ago, I was doing the range injury class.
Uh-huh.
And out in Cardinal or whatever. And the range master, cool dude, he's talking, and he's like, and there's a coffee over there at the gut truck. And I'm like, hold up. Did you just say gut truck?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, yeah. I'm like, were you in the military? He's like, yeah, I was a colonel. I'm like, all right. Just wanted to make sure. I didn't want to bromance with him, but like, you hear gut truck like in a random, like, interjected into normal society, you're like, hold up.
And dudes would like spend their paycheck. Like, you'd go to the field and the gut truck would show up, and guys would they would buy 10 like $6 Monsters.
Oh yeah. And
food and snacks.
I was those guys.
Yeah. It was an ordeal. I remember at NTC, I want to say there were gut trucks like when you were in the Ruba, which this doesn't mean anything to anyone who wasn't an NTC, but I don't think they were allowed in the box.
Right.
So basically for the 2-week or the 10-day like actual training exercise, there were no like, cause it's like a creature comfort. So there was no like,
just warm mega sport.
Yep. And then as soon as we came back, it was like, dude, yeah.
That's the first time I found out that there was caffeine in tea, because they were like, no caffeine. Like, it's hot out here, water only.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. So I got an Arnold Palmer. They're like, no monsters. What you guys need to drink water, whatever. I got an Arnold Palmer, and they were like, this person was like, I seriously said no caffeine. I'm like, it's tea. It's tea.
They think you're trying to be slick. Because let's be honest, that would
How
be...
much caffeine is in an Arnold Palmer, though?
Yeah, not enough.
10 milligrams?
Yeah,
8?
right. That was, the old... I forgot about the caffeine ban. Because like you can be trusted with millions of dollars worth of equipment.
Yeah, but you can't have a chocolat.
Yeah. Yeah, it was funny. Miserable experience.
Right.
All of my lessons, like military life lessons, are all rooted in absolute misery. Mm-hmm. That one would fall into that category.
Right. All right, so let's talk about your new business.
Yeah, so I started a small time exterior cleaning business. Really, it's pressure washing window cleaning, which is pretty... I've come to find out is a pretty common thing for firemen. I don't know what it is about it, but
really?
Yeah, it seems like
I thought all firemen just worked at other fire departments.
That too. Well, I used to do that. I guess I technically still do, but there's also something about being a fireman where like no matter how much you make, you're never happy, and it's like all you want is more time off, but then all you do is fill your time off with all this dumb shit.
True.
But
put that on a statue somewhere.
A guy told me, one of the guys I work with, he's like, I'm going to tell you what somebody told me, and I didn't take their advice, but it was essentially, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, but he's like, you know, you're going to spend all your time at work trying to make money, and then your wife's going to leave you because you're never home. And then you'll tell the next guy. He's like, you know, somebody told me that. And he's like, and here I am. He's like, I spend all my free time working a part-time job. And he's like, and I'm sure my wife's probably going to divorce me eventually. And he's like, I'm telling you. And he's like, and I'm telling you, I didn't take the advice that was given to me either. So make your own decisions. But
right. You were warned.
I mean, it was basically his message. And this was honestly what Wes told me when I first started at Madison. And he just said, it doesn't matter how much money you make. You just have to live within your means. And that's, I mean, math is simple, right? But in practice, it's a little bit harder because of that. It's like the endless circle of desire. No matter what you have, you always want more.
Yeah.
But anyways,
that's buffet rules.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea for starting a business. I always kind of wanted to be a business owner of some sort. I guess I didn't really know what it would be.
Kind of just wanted your own thing.
Yeah, and my parents have a pizza shop, like I mentioned, and I kind of for a long time thought when my dad wanted to retire, I would just buy the shop and take it over. And over the years, I realized it wasn't what I wanted to do. So it actually started from like working a part-time job, and the thing about like working a part-time fire job is nobody really wants to spend their days off at another firehouse, but you also kind of know what you're getting yourself into. Right, you know what I mean? Like sometimes it's like you don't see firemen working a part-time job at Home Depot just because they got free time. Right. You know, because it's like I don't want to say it's easy money, but like there's a certain I guess expectation of like working a part-time fire job.
Right.
But I think I was going somewhere with that. I don't remember. But I was working this part-time fire job, and I was like, it's not bad. Like, I like the people I work with. And at the time, my part-time job was in the city that I was living in. But I kind of realized, I was like, man, I could, like, cut grass for 3 hours and make what I make here in a 20, and not maybe a 12-hour shift.
Yeah.
Right. So I just started like picking up lawns because people were constantly on Facebook like, hey, my lawn guy stopped showing up, or they're just looking for someone to cut their grass. So I started like picking up lawn jobs, and it was fine, but I also quickly figured out that wasn't for me at the time. And this is all like, I have no experience with any of this. So I pretty much was just like, yeah, I got a lawnmower. I'll cut grass.
Right.
With anything you learn as you go. Like, I would do it completely differently now than I did before. And I think that, like, if somebody's out there, like, it's their dream, especially like high school kids or younger kids, they're like, well, I'm going to buy a mower and start a landscaping company.
Yeah.
You totally could do it, and you could make really good money. I just was stupid about the way I was doing it. But decided I didn't want to do that. And then I don't know what got me into the next thing was windows, because I would always see these guys running around that do like the storefronts. And because when I worked at the pizza shop, they would come in there and we'd pay them. I don't know. We didn't have a lot of windows, but it was like, like $20.
Yeah.
And they're there for 5 minutes, because they're so good at it. They do it so fast. And I'm like, this kid probably has $40 worth of tools, and he's got a little car. But I would see they go from place to place to place, and like you go to a plaza. And
That's what I was going to ask. Did he just hit the whole plaza and make $30-$40 a business and be done?
Yep, and that's what they do. But I always thought to myself, like, I could probably do that. Like, It seems like, you talk about like barrier for entry. That would be a low cost, like low barrier for entry business.
Yeah.
So I honestly think I saw something on like YouTube or some kind of social media. It was like some window cleaner on YouTube.
Is it the kid that gives people really good price, or like
definitely
haggles?
Not.
Okay.
No.
You know what I'm talking about?
I've heard of or like know of that person. I've never seen any of his videos. Don't know his name. But it also, I don't have any interest in it because it just seems like a sleazy sales tactics. And I am very like,
yeah, his tactic is, the guy's like, well, let me talk to my wife. And he's like, well, we're just on the street today.
yeah.
Then,
That like false time constraint.
Yeah. Urgency.
Yeah. Which I'm not really putting down salespeople, obviously. And I guess we'll get into it, but selling is part of any business, right? Like, unless you have no competition, unless you have a business or provide a service that everybody needs and there's no competition, like, you have to sell, and you have to advertise. But I'm not a fan of what I consider to be kind of like sleazy, high pressure sales. And I think we've all experienced it at some point in our life.
Right.
But I started going down the window cleaning rabbit hole. And then I wasn't like convinced to do it. And then I talked to one of the guys I worked with. I never even met this guy before. And it just came up, and he said he had a little side business and he was doing like pressure washing and window cleaning. And he was just like, basically he convinced me to do it. He was like, yeah, it's pretty easy to get started, and didn't really give me any advice. I was just kind of like, well, if he's doing it, I can do it,
Right.
So I just was like, I'm doing it right now. Filed my LLC, got insurance. I already had the equipment. I had been practicing like on my own house and stuff like that already, but I very quickly made the move into like making it a legitimate above board business. And
Were you surprised by the demand, or did you already have a good sense of, or did you think it was going to take a while for you to start getting start getting hit up? Or
I don't know what I thought, to be honest. Now, the first thing I did was I used an app. An app called Thumbtack. I almost don't even want to say the name of it. But so what Thumbtack is I can list my service and then people can find me and contact me. It's a lead service, a lead generation service. I think it's a lot better as a consumer than as like a contractor. Yeah. But at the time I wasn't doing any advertising. I didn't have any customer base, didn't have any. I didn't even know that people paid money to have their windows clean.
You mean like residential?
Yeah. Like I said, I knew about kind of the commercial storefront space, but I had no idea. And then like you see like you do, like most people in my situation, I spent probably hundreds of hours online just trying to find whatever I could, like YouTube videos, internet forums, Facebook groups.
Do your homework.
Yeah, and sometimes I feel like there's people, myself included, can be a little bit more towards like research everything, like try and plan for every possible outcome, but really like you just got to get out there and do it. You just got to do it. So I actually relatively quickly landed 2 window cleaning jobs from that app.
What's their kickback?
Significant.
Is it?
It depends. The whole thing, their whole thing, is that you pay. So say I'm a contractor, they call them pros, right? Like you're a Thumbtack pro.
Yeah.
And say you're a customer and you want a window cleaner. You can search whatever service you want. And there's all kinds of stuff. There's handyman, window cleaners, pressure washing, lawn, like anything you could think of. But you basically pick me, or usually people will pick several people, and you say, I'm interested in this service. Well, Thumbtack charges the pro for that connection. So I don't know how they price it. Presumably it's based off of how much money you stand to make from this job, because
and that has to be transparent through the app.
Well,
it's not like Facebook Marketplace where you just put did not sell.
No, it doesn't. So if somebody messages me as a pro, or they don't really message, but if they pick me, like they're interested in my service, I pay automatically.
Okay.
And like, now,
even if it leads to zero.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're paying for the lead, you're paying for the connection.
Okay.
Now, what I will say about that is, the leads are hot. They're people that most of the time, I mean, I've had some issues with some bad leads, but most of the time they're people that if somebody messages 3 people for a window cleaner, they're going to hire one of them. Right. Like, so the leads are hot, but it's also, so there's not much for people to go off of other than price.
Right.
And some jobs are different because, so window cleaning is typically a job that I quote in person. A lot of people like to quote things over the phone because it takes time. I mean, if you're a contractor with a full schedule, you're going to spend an entire day of your week quoting jobs.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that's like Saturday or Sunday. So I try to quote virtually if I can, but there are some things where I kind of have to do it in person.
Yeah.
So there, you're actually meeting the person and kind of like they get a feel for, they kind of see what your vibe is, I guess.
Right.
But a lot of these jobs, like specifically gutter cleaning, because like everybody and their brother does gutter cleaning, like window cleaners do it, power washers do it, landscapers do it, handymen do it. So many people do it.
You have all the equipment.
And that's something that people don't usually quote in person unless you have to. And it's just a race to the bottom with price. Like there's a lot of, and this is service business in general, probably all business in general. There's a lot of people that their entire business model is undercutting everybody else.
I'm sure that gets them very far.
Well, in some people may, if you're new, so like I have a full-time job, I'm not really worried about paying my bills. So like I'm fortunate in that aspect.
Right.
If I didn't, and I had to worry about paying my bills and
You just be looking for work.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because if my truck's in my driveway, it's not making any money. So some people probably have that mindset. I would venture to guess that those people, after a while and their schedule starts to fill up, they raise their prices.
Right.
Because one, they see the value in the service that they're providing. And two, I mean, it's common sense. If you're working for cheap and you're booked out for 3 weeks and you're turning down work, like, well, these other people are probably willing to pay more money.
Right. So that's how that was. You already answered the question, but I was going to ask, like, what made you? So it was like the low barrier of entry, like, well, I don't have to invest because you had the stuff, and if you hated it, no big deal. You could pretty much stop doing it.
Right. Yeah. I don't actually know. I just felt compelled for some reason.
Yeah.
To start with the window cleaning. And then, like I said, I got those 2 jobs relatively quickly. Learned a lot in a short amount of time, because also keep in mind, like, it's not like I worked for a window cleaning company and had any kind of apprenticeship. Like,
I was going to ask, do you have like a mentor type, anybody fill that role where you can ask?
yeah, a guy on YouTube called Steve-O the window cleaner. I'll give him a free plug here.
Yep.
He's actually everybody knows the guy because he's got a popular window cleaning YouTube channel. And there are others, but I basically learned how to clean windows online.
Yeah.
And there's definitely, it's a trade. So
Right.
I don't know. I know that there's a lot that I don't know, but I can clean a window, right?
Right.
Well, then the window cleaning, I started with that, and then I started to get interested in pressure washing, and it was just one of those things where a guy, so somebody that my full-time job, we hired somebody new, and he is already owning and operating a successful pressure washing business, and he lives an hour away from me. So he was just like, yeah, man, if you want to do it, he's like, I'll help you. I'll kind of.
So you weren't stepping on his turf.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, like, he's a nice guy, and he probably wouldn't care anyways, but I'm far enough away from him that I'm not really competing with him. And, he's his business is pretty successful, and there's a lot of gatekeeping that goes on with any kind of, I mean, really everywhere, but it seems like in the field that I'm in, there's a lot of people that are like, they think everybody's an idiot, and like you should just quit, right? Like, quit while you're ahead. And
Right.
it seems like my experience has been, which my experience is limited, that a lot of times the people who are the most successful are the ones who are the most willing to help. And I'm fortunate that my buddy Tyler was willing to help me, and I'm still very early in the game. Like, this is my first year in business. And I still have a lot to learn about a lot of things, but on the pressure washing side, it's been really helpful to have a mentor and have somebody to, like, when I'll be out working and I know he's out working. So if I got a question, I just call him and he answers the phone. And
So he's your guy. He's more or less your guide.
Yeah, he's my mentor.
Yeah.
Like, straight up. I knew a lot, and I think this is one reason why he was willing to help me, is because I did so much work on my own, like so much research.
Yeah.
That he knew I was coming in with a base of knowledge. Because what will happen,
And you weren't just like snot nose. I want to clean windows too.
and then that happens, especially when
Right.
people see that you're successful or becoming successful, and they're like, well, I want a piece of that too. And it's like, man, what's stopping you, man? Go out there and get it.
Yeah. Competition's good for everybody.
Right. And that's very much my philosophy is, there's enough to go around for everybody. I would say one of my, like, core values is just quality, right? Like, I've always thought if you provide a quality good or service, but if it's quality, you're always going to have demand for it regardless almost of price.
Right. And do you get rated on that app?
You do.
I'm sure that's helpful.
It is. Yeah, and obviously like that's part of building a business is the world that we live in. Like you have to have Google reviews, you have to have a Facebook page, you have to have a website. Like, I mean, I say you have to have, there's people that are out there that are successful that don't have it, but
I don't know how people did it back in the day. Did they throw like a handful of flyers out and just hope that somebody picks it up? People
still do.
More people went to church back then.
True.
So word of mouth.
Well, once you already have a clientele, and I'm sure this applies to other things, but specifically in like this field, once you have a clientele, you'll get work just based off word of mouth.
Yeah.
Because everybody wants to use somebody that they know if you had a guy paint your house and they did a really good job and I need my house painted, I'm probably just gonna be like, hey Jerrod, who's the guy that painted your house and like how do I get a hold of him?
Right.
So you can get to that point where you can just operate off of, maybe you have like recurring clients and also just word of mouth.
Does it seem to be, sorry to cut you off, does it seem like the same type of clientele for everybody you do? Because I have to imagine, like, I don't have a very big house. I'm not going to pay somebody to wash my windows. So does it seem more like, if you're washing windows, it's a bigger house with a lot of windows?
Not at all.
Really?
Yeah. And that was one of the things that surprised me. I've done a handful of houses that are just like yours, probably some even like less windows.
Yeah.
I think some people just do it. I don't know. I couldn't tell you why, and I wouldn't even say like that my clients are more well off. I'd say like most of my clients are like middle class.
They just like clean windows.
Yeah, and I don't know where that comes from. I'm sure, I don't know, maybe like their parents got their windows cleaned growing up, or
that's something to think about. Or you get your windows cleaned once and then you're just hooked. They don't look the same ever again.
And I will tell you this. I mean, you wouldn't believe, if you are somebody that doesn't regularly clean your windows, which is most people, or people will clean the inside, even though, like, unless you really keep, like most people Windex the inside, unless you really keep up with it, they still get dirty.
I can barely see out of my
Yeah, but when you have them cleaned, there really is like, you can tell the difference, and you're like, man, it's just like, just feels different in here.
Right.
And especially, if you had like a sunroom or a room in your house where the window is kind of like, it's almost like a focal point, right? Like you got a big picture window in your family room.
Yeah.
And then you get that cleaned after never having it cleaned in 10 years. And
do you clean skylights?
Oh, yeah.
It's a big.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much any glass, sometimes like mirrors, which like usually if I do a house, I'll do the mirrors like just as a courtesy, as long as there's a reasonable number of mirrors.
Right.
But yeah, any glass, like glass doors, windows, skylight, solar panels kind of fall into that category too.
What area do you service?
Pretty much everything within 30 miles of where I live in Portage County. So I'm based out of Streetsboro. So I usually say I'm willing to drive up to an hour, which comes out to be about 30 miles. So essentially, that's my service area. I'm not busy enough to where I can take a job or turn a job down if I want it or if I don't want it.
Right.
An area, especially because I'm an owner-operator and I work by myself, it can be a pain if I'm going like an hour one direction and then I have to go an hour the other direction. It's like half of my day is driving.
Right.
So I would like to eventually maybe shrink it down a little bit, but I'm not at that point yet.
Right.
I'm still very much in the growing phase, which was the point I was going to make is when you talk about referrals and word of mouth and this, that, and the other, like all that stuff is great, but it's slow. You know, I could do that, and probably it would take me 4, 5, 6 years to have like a decent amount of work. But if you want to build a clientele fast, you have to advertise, and just, again, by doing more work. The best way to get work is to be out there working, right? And for somebody starting out, when you don't really have work, you got to advertise. Right.
Does it feel awkward to getting into that selling yourself? Well, you're selling your business, not yourself, but
I would say a lot of times you are selling yourself.
Well, it is just you.
Well,
and even if you had employees, it's still your name. So
right. And if you, I mean, a clean window is a clean window.
Right.
So I can't say I clean windows better than the next guy, because the reality is I probably don't. But I think, and I don't know that I really sell myself in that way, but I think people just like to know, you know, they want to like know about you as a person, or kind of meet you. And again, just get a vibe. Like,
you tell them you're a full-time fireman, and they're like, he's probably not going to rob us when we're gone.
I mean,
that's got to play a little bit of a part, right?
I try not to tell people.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I will say that I think when people find out, or if you tell them, they're more likely to trust you. But
you don't want to lead with it.
Yeah, I don't know. It always
kind of
just
corny.
It struck me as being a little bit corny.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, and I'm not hating on anybody that does it, but a lot of people, like, if they have a business, their business name is like something related to the fire service, and
right.
It's like, yeah, I mean, I get it, and I'm not saying you're doing anything wrong. It's just not the direction that I wanted to go.
Yeah. What's the name of your business? I don't think we've...
It is currently Delta Property Services, which is an homage to the 19 Delta Cav Scout.
Love it.
But I'm in the process of rebranding. So next year, if everything goes according to plan, it'll be Reputable Power Washing and then Reputable Window Cleaning, under the umbrella of I'll still be like Delta, but I feel like for branding purposes, I want to keep it separate.
Is there going to be 2 P's?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I didn't know if it was going to be like the Colbert Report.
So I actually thought about that, but
searchability might be.
Yeah, it didn't. Honestly, when I typed it out, it didn't look good.
Yeah.
I just didn't like the way it looked. Reputable is already 4 syllables, right? Which is like not ideal for, I think, again, when I talk about massive research, like people research, like, how do you make a business name? And
right.
4 syllables is not recommended, but I just didn't like the way it looked. And then I'm like, I'm going to be putting this on my truck.
Right.
I also didn't want my name to be in it, which it kind of is. Like, that's the obvious kind of play on words is reputable and rep.
Yeah.
But I didn't want it to just be like, Rep's window cleaning, or Big John's window cleaning.
I don't know. That one might be my favorite, but
well, and I don't ever have, like, I'm not thinking now about selling the company, but if I ever got to a position where I wanted to sell, it would probably be more marketable if it didn't have my name in it.
Nobody named Dave, or nobody with the last name Smith's going to buy,
Right.
That's smart. So where can people find you then? Your business anyway. If you want them to Facebook you personally, you let me know. I'll put it in the show notes. But
Delta Property Services on Facebook should be pretty easy to find. I don't have a very robust Facebook at this moment. That's actually one of the things I'm working on in the off season is website / Facebook.
Yeah.
But I'm out there. You can follow me. I don't really do much in the way of content, especially not right now. That's another thing I have to get better at for next year, especially is I do a pretty good job about doing like before and after pictures, but sometimes I think people want to see
the snippets.
Yeah, snippets, and they want to see like me actually working, or us. I say us, my girlfriend occasionally will help me if I can convince her it's a good idea and it's in her best interest to help me. But yeah, I think sometimes the before and after pictures are great, and sometimes they can be drastic. You know, like sometimes you get a house. This is more like the pressure washing, but you get a house that's like completely green, and you wash it, and it's like looks like a completely different house.
I will stop scrolling to see that. I think most people do, and like the during, like just the different colors, if you will.
Yeah, but
people love that stuff,
right? And I think some of it too is just to, you know, what are they looking for when they're on your website or your Facebook or whatever? I think they're looking for like social proof.
Yeah. Kind
of like ultimately that's where they're going to decide, am I going to give you my money or not?
Right.
Right. Cause I don't have any data to support this, but I don't think I'm really convincing many people that they need their house to be washed or they need their windows to be cleaned. I think these are people that already have the service in mind.
Absolutely.
And they're trying to figure out like, who do I want to hire to do this?
Yeah. It's like, I don't know, going to get your brakes changed. I've already made my mind that I'm going to.
Right.
Well, if you don't get your windows clean, you won't crash and die, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no. I know what you mean.
Right on.
So, yeah. It's been a cool learning experience. And it was, again, like, so kind of like with me getting into the fire service, it was just like a kind of moment in my life where I was just like, you know what? I've been thinking about doing this for a long time. I'm just going to do it. And however, like, let the chips fall where they may. Mm-hmm. I had a safety net of my job, and my girlfriend also has a full-time job. So, you know, that is, I'm fortunate that is my situation, but, you know, I'm not apologetic about it either, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So.
Right on, man.
I'm sure you probably went through, you're in a completely different space than me, but I'm sure you probably went through a lot of the same stuff, like starting out with Fire Ridge, because you didn't have any, that I know of, you didn't have any business experience coming into it.
Personally, no. But it was also, like you said, one of those things like, well, if it doesn't work, then I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So
right.
It definitely grants you a lot of freedoms to explore different things.
Right.
Instead of, like we talked about earlier, just like going out there and trying to survive.
Right.
All right, man. Well, we're going to wrap this up. Then we can talk about cleaning windows later.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, man. Thanks for talking to me.
Thanks for having me.
Later.